Up next, we have Mr. Dean Tuck. He is the Managing Director of Dreadnought Resources, ASX code, write it down, ladies and gentlemen, DRE. Now, these guys are the new kid on the block, and I've told you I always like to find the new kid on the block. These are the new kids on the block. They only came on to the register in April of last year, and they have been kicking goals over in Western Australia. So we've been up to Alaska, been to New South Wales, back to Western Australia. Dean Tuck, Dreadnought Resources, welcome to the Virtual Gold Conference. Great to see you.
Thank you, Kerry, and great to be here.
Now, for those that don't know, because you are the new kid on the block, let's do, to start with, a little bit of an overview of who are Dreadnought Resources, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail.
All right, Dreadnought Resources, we're a fairly young company, junior exploration company. Our fearless leader is Paul Chapman. He's our chairman. He's currently the chairman of Encounter and also Black Cat Syndicate, another fairly successful gold company on the ASX, and I believe actually presenting at this conference. And we also have our calm and cool Ian Gordon, who used to be the managing director of Ramelius Resources, took the real money success that they had from the discovery of Wattle Dam and transitioned that company into the Mount Magnet operations and everything that's built them up from the foundation they have today. And our third director of the company is a bit of a gold specialist, our technical guru, and that's Paul Payne, discoverer of Mount Morgans, which led to the founding of Dacian as a gold mining company. So we have a fantastic board. I'm the young and dumb one brought in. I'm an exploration geologist by trade, and I've built up a team of other young, very hungry exploration geologists who knows what it takes to get out there and make that discovery.
You know, I often say to people when I'm talking to them, you've got to look at the boards, you've got to look at the people, and you've clearly put together a very strong board, and they've all got runs from their, past achievements, which is fantastic. So
absolutely, couldn't ask for a better board, couldn't ask for a better team, and we got the good projects to go with it as well.
Well, let's talk about some projects because you are new. Let's talk about what you've done. April 2019. Then we had COVID, and here we are sitting at the end of November.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that have been happening since that time and how you've got these assets together.
All right. Well, I guess Dreadnought originally came on board with our assets up in the Kimberley. It's a very exciting ground, elephant country. It's got copper, gold, nickel, and copper VMS sort of prospects up there, off limits to exploration since 1978, as it was belonged to a Commonwealth Defence Reserve. And then when I came on board, one of the other projects that we brought on board quickly within the first few months was the Illaara Gold Project. And we acquired this project off of Newmont, who had had the project since 2016. And essentially they had gone into this region, picked up this greenstone belt, and the entire 75 struck kilometers hadn't been explored for gold since the 1990s. It had been held by the iron ore explorers since 2000. And in 2015, 2016, some of the iron ore explorers fell out, dropped the ground. Newmont went in there because it had some really nice regional signatures. And they were kind enough to do the first pass kilometer by kilometer sampling, identify these nice big camp scale targets with their proprietary geochemistry. And then they couldn't get the drill programs done. They got Tanami approved with the CLC, became all hands on deck in the Northern Territory, and their exploration manager went off to the US. And this asset was left sitting here, this entire greenstone belt with camp scale anomalies defined. And I knew some of the guys at Newmont, asked them what they were doing with that project, and they wanted to see it get drilled and explored properly. So they were more than happy to give us a crack at it here at Dreadnought. We picked it up off them and then proceeded to consolidate the rest of the tenure that wasn't held by Newmont. So we did a couple more deals to consolidate the greenstone belt, and that gave us Metzke's Find, which is what we've recently had our big exploration success at.
Wow, what a story. I mean, talk about getting lucky. It's knowing the right people at the right time in the right jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've got a big smile on your face, so you're clearly liking what you're seeing to date. So let's talk about Metzke's Find. Let's talk about some of the drilling and some of the results you're getting.
All right, so a bit of background on Metzke's Find and I guess the Alara Greenstone Belt in general is that in the 1913, Metzke's was walking across from Mount Ida, going down to Southern Cross, and he walked across the Alara Greenstone Belt and saw what looked like to be some really nice gold country. And he grabbed some samples, but there was no water. And the water was always a hindrance for this region and why not many people actually crossed through that area of prospecting. to the point where a prospecting party from Mount Ida actually tried to go out there after Metzke, and they all had to turn back because they almost died from dehydration.
Wow.
And so Metzke's finds this. They do some early stage prospecting work and show that it's running about 1 to 2 ounces to the ton. It's got a quartz vein running 19 chains across the surface, outcropping. And they try and get the state government to build a road and sink water wells so that they can develop this thing back in the 1920s at this stage. They get a little bit of support, but not a whole lot. And so this area remains really remote and really undeveloped. 1980s, 1990s, there was some early stage drilling done by a few, 2 gold companies. They drilled down to an average depth of 24 meters, and they hit some nice narrow vein, high grade gold under the workings, and they hit a lot of stopes that Metzke's and them had left behind, and it hadn't been touched since.
And for those of you that are listening, I'm sorry to interrupt you, dear, but for those of you listening, 24 meters is like a centimeter when it comes to mining.
Absolutely nothing. A lot of companies right now are talking about, no one's drilled under 100 meters. We haven't even, our deepest drill hole at the moment is 100 meters. And we're hitting high grade golds in that top 100 meters. And we're chasing it down now with 2 rigs. So we got...
So you've got 2 rigs. And when you say you're chasing it down, what have you found so far?
In June this year, we went out there and put some of our first drill holes into Metzke's, drilled it down to about 60 meters vertical depth. And we were getting intercepts such as 3 meters at 21 grams per ton.
Oh, wow.
2 meters at 40 grams per ton, 7 at 7.5. Like some really, really attractive gold intercepts, very high grades. We could pan the gold in the dish. From RC drilling, like that's pretty unheard of and pretty spectacular. So we have about a 1 to 2 meter wide vein with a few bit of alteration around the outside of it. And we went out there and chased that up again, chased it down to 100 meters, again, getting the same tenor of mineralization, the same high grades. We got about 250 to 300 meters of strike, and now we're down 100 meters. That kicks off the program that we are currently doing. We've got an RC rig on site, which is drilling Metzke's and doing our pre-colors, and we have our first diamond holes going in. And I guess, the first diamond holes are being drilled as we speak, and really looking forward to see what comes out from that. Chasing it down to 200 meters, and we'll keep going from that as long as it holds together.
So the next step is to go a little bit deeper. Do you have an idea? And look, I know it's very early days, but this was, you started in June having a look at this. Has it surprised you, the sort of the grades? And because for those of you that are listening, the sort of grades that Dean is talking about are very, very strong. And if it continues, this could be very interesting. Is it comparable to anything that you've seen in your past working life?
I think when I got that first assay receipts and it came in at 51 grams per ton over a meter or whatever that first one was, my breath was taken away. I've never seen that even on a rock chip, those sorts of high grades in a project that I've worked on myself. So That was extremely exciting and of course, very, very encouraging. So and I guess the other, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And one of the other exciting things about Metzke's is Metzke's is of itself. And these gold lodes never really occur by themselves. They never occur in isolation. We have 2 successful companies recently. You have Spectrum with their Penny West. Yep. You had the Penny deposit sitting on top in the shallow outcropping. And then Spectrum came along and they drilled underneath that and found Penny West. That was 200,000 to 300,000 ounces, and they sold that for $250 million. And then you also have Bellevue, which is currently going, another narrow vein, high grade system. They're drilling down 500, 600, 700 meters now. They've got about over a million ounces worth of gold. Sorry about that. They got over 1 million ounces worth of gold with a market cap of 1 billion. So what's exciting to us is that this is an area that's been completely untouched. Metzke's was barely touched in and of itself. And we have another 1.2 kilometers of mineralized structure on Metzke's that we're putting our first drill holes into now, the first drill holes ever, not just us, of anyone. And we also have a parallel lode that's 1.5, 1.6 kilometers long, about 400 to 500 meters away. And we're putting our very first drill holes into that. Really nice, strong gold and soil anomalies, and very excited to see what they pop up.
You mentioned some market capitalization of the company. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, because there are some people that are going, well, what does that all mean? It just means the value, the number of shares on issue times the price of the share. Now, when you listed back in April, I think you said your market cap of about 4 million. And today you're
correct.
sitting about 50 to 60 million, shares are about 2.5 cents. But with these sorts of results coming out, it's only just the beginning, in your opinion, is that right?
That's what we play this game for, and that's what we believe. So we're out there drilling now with 2 rigs, and we're going to keep that going as long as we can to prove it up.
Do you think are you going to just focus on Metzke's find, or are there other projects that you're looking at the moment as well?
We have other projects, even within the Alara Greenstone Belt. So the 8 kilometers north of Metzke's is actually the Longmoors find, which had another fantastic history to it. But we recently hit 1 meter at 100 grams per ton up there.
Oh,
and so that just sort of case in point of there's always multiple lodes. That's 8 kilometers north within the same camp. And within that sort of camp scale idea, 46 kilometers south of Metzke's, we have another one of our camps that we're just now doing soils over, and that's called our Lawrence's camp. And that's another 10 to 12 kilometer long Newmont's camp scale anomaly. We're doing our first pass target generation on that. We'll get those soils in, we'll get the infill done, and we'll try and have that drill ready for first thing next year. So in addition to finding additional lodes up at Metzke's find, we're actually going to be exploring down at Lawrence's as well, and to continue to find these high grade lodes.
When you are looking at all these different ones, why has there not been more attention in this area, and why did Newmont just walk away from it?
Yeah, history is, the reason why Newmont walks away from things, and they have such large target thresholds for their resources. And there's not many of these orogenic greenstone belt hosted deposits that they still continue to search for. Tanamides, big deposits, porphyries, and things like that.
Do you know what I asked? I asked you before because, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, because Dean, you've got an unusual accent, and you're originally from Texas.
That is correct. So I am from Texas originally, came over in 2007. My mom's a geologist. My grandfather was a prospector. And then my brother and my father and my other grandfather were all historians. And
wow.
I've always grown up with this love of marrying both the history and the science. Because to understand why things are, you have to understand how they came to be. Right. And that really is a fundamental driver, I guess, in the way that we do project generation. Is most people believe the shadow of the head frame is the best place to explore. But my passion is actually looking at the places that have no known mineral occurrences, when geologically they should, and aiming to understand why they actually don't. And Alara is a good example, and one of our other new projects, which we can talk about soon, is another good example of that. With Alara, I alluded to earlier with Metzke's, that there's not a whole lot of good surface fresh water in the area.
Yeah.
And so groundwater and freshwater availability always hindered exploration and development of this region. You go back even further, and you actually look at where prospectors had to come from. So you had your main rail lines and your main roads that connected Perth to Kalgoorlie, and then up to Leonora and Laverton. And then you had your other rail lines that went up to the Murchison, through Meekatharra, and then across the top, the Sandstone and Wiluna. The Alara project sits right in the middle of that. Over 100 miles at that stage, they all used miles, not just the Americans. Over 100 miles from any of these railheads sits the Alara project. So you're far from access from where prospectors can get on the train and get out bush, and you also don't have any of your water availability to sustain any sort of long-term prospecting party. And so it's an area that has not been explored, it has not had discoveries, purely because of the acts of nature and the way that the rail lines and the history developed around the goldfields.
And today that's not an issue, is it? Because of course you can take your water up with, I mean, how does it work today? You just...
Today we have much better roads, much better ways of getting out there, and it's not a hindrance to us at all whatsoever.
Okay, so we've covered Metzke's, which sounds pretty exciting. What are you doing with Longmoors Find? So
Longmoors Find, we've just completed RC drilling up there, chasing up that 100 gram per ton intercept.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if that holds together. If it does, then fantastic. If not, then we'll keep drilling and keep exploring for the next one. So Longmoors Find, we've completed that drilling, and those samples have now been sent off to the lab for analysis, and we'll see those back here in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so getting some news flow out in the next 4 to 6 weeks. What are your plans? Because we're coming up to the end of the year. What are the plans for 2021?
2021, we're going to get straight back out to Alara after New Year's and start drilling again. We have quite a few new targets. within the Metzke's trend, and we also have our targets that will generate down at Lawrence's. So we'll get back out there within our sea rig to do the exploration. And if Metzke's continues to hold together, we'll have the diamond rig back out there, and we'll keep chasing that thing further at depth and along strike.
These projects are all 100% owned by Dreadnought Resources. Is that correct? There's no joint ventures, no partners.
No, Alara is 100% owned by Dreadnought.
All right. What about some of your other projects? Because we don't have a lot of time left, but we've got a few minutes left. I just want to talk about, because you have some other prospects that you're looking at, but is the focus Metzke's and Longmoors along this Alara area or chain, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah.
Are you looking at others as well? Because of course, if you can get so many projects that you can get distracted, I guess.
Yes. We don't want to be distracted, but we also want to have continuous news flow, and we also want to have news flow throughout the seasons. So we always like to have 3 projects on the go. Our other main project, as I talked about earlier, is up in the Kimberley. Up there, we do have some really nice copper gold targets that we believe are analogs to Mount Isa and Tennant Creek, which will be very exciting. We'll be drilling those as soon as the dry season comes on board, come May, June. And then we've also recently picked up a new project, so even earlier stage yet again, to help keep that pipeline going of good projects and good attractive gold. And that's our Mangaroon project located up in the Gascoyne.
How did you come across that one, Dean?
The Gascoyne's always been of historical interest to me. It's an area, it's the only gold fields in Western Australia that never received a state battery. So in the 1890s, you have Australia, WA's first major gold rush. Even Donnybrook got a state battery. And there's not much gold down in Donnybrook. A state battery is where they processed gold. It was a stamp mill, so it would crush and pulverize the rock, and then that rock would go across a mercury amalgam, and they would extract the gold from that. Essentially, that's what the state provided for the prospectors and the mining companies to take their rocks to, so they could get paid for the rocks that they found. And so if you're a prospector, you want to make sure that you can carry your few tons of rocks a very short distance to a state battery. That's one of the ways you incentivize the development and exploration of a new gold field. So when the Gascoyne, the Bangamal gold field was discovered, they're finding these high grades, 1, 2, 3 ounce per ton reefs like you were back in those days. And the state battery was sent up, but unfortunately the state engineer was not there to receive it. And so the state battery never got commissioned and never operated within the Bangamal gold field. 1910, continuing to find high-grade gold at Bangamal and Cobre, and they again asked for a state battery, and the state battery is not delivered by the state government. 1930s, Western Australia's second major gold rush. Again, they've asked for a state battery, and again, they are denied. So here you have this ground, which is producing high-grade gold, and is developing a reputation as the least endowed and least productive gold field in all of Western Australia, because the gold had to be carted all the way to Mica-Thera. Right. And that distance essentially economically destroyed any prospects that were found by prospectors, and it hindered and de-incentivized any prospectors from exploring that area. Flash forward to the 1960s, and the local pastoralists are essentially doing all the exploration up in this region. And on Mangaroon in particular, Alan McDonald and a few of the guys that owned the Mangaroon homestead were working in the paddock, and they come across this quartz vein. They send off to the state assayer, and it's running 9 ounces to the ton. They then send off another assay, and the state assayer actually writes a letter back to them and say, if you send me another rock, I'm going to go up there and mine that thing myself. This was ridiculously high grade, but again, the economics were so challenging for them, they couldn't get any companies interested because they had to cart it all the way to Mica-Thera.
Right.
However, that didn't stop them. They produced gold, and there's still a lot of gold in the ground there at the Star of Mangaroon. So we've since taken up a very large land holding up in this area. We believe that there's a lot of high-grade gold yet to be discovered. It's been off limits to a lot of people because they believe the area is unendowed, but there's absolutely no reason geologically for this ground to not have a lot more gold. And we're going to be the first ones up there to do some really good systematic work and find some high-grade gold deposits in this region.
Dean, I've got 30 seconds left on the clock. Tell investors out there why they should look at Dreadnought and put it into their not only watch list, but their investment list.
We are shareholders. Dreadnought controls about 20% of the company. We put in $1.2 million of our own cold hard cash. We will continue to put money into the ground, and we are here to deliver shareholder returns because we are the largest shareholders of this company. So if you trust us with your money, we're trusting ourselves with our money as well, and we will do our best to deliver.
It's what I always say to people. You got to make sure they got skin in the game. It's nice to hear you've got skin in the game. Lots of news flow to come along. As I said, the ASX code, ladies and gentlemen, write it down. It's DRE, Dreadnought Resources, new kid on the block, coming up trumps. Thanks for joining us today at the Virtual Gold Conference.
Thank you very much, Gary, and thank you all.